What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. I am your host, Josh Elmer. Happy to be with all of you on a Thursday night as we enter the home stretch of the month of July. Essentially, I'm rounding down here. 35 days to football. Feels like we're about a month out. And of course, today was Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. And the Hawkeyes, Kirk Ferentz, Logan Jones, Ethan Hurkett, Cohen Intringer, they took center stage from Las Vegas. So we've got a lot to dissect on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live tonight. Again, I'm Josh Elmer. You can follow me at Josh on Ref. Support my written work and the team's written work at Hawkeyes Wire. And everybody should be following the voice of college football at the VOCFB. All right, well, let's get underway. A lot to dissect. We heard from Beth Getz today, the Iowa athletics director, as part of Big Ten Media Days. I thought she had some interesting things to say about revenue sharing, the approach for Iowa, how the partnership with Venmo has gone so far, the addition. Remember, we talked earlier this month about the risers that are being implemented inside Carver Hawkeye Arena for this upcoming men's and women's basketball season, the wrestling season ahead. And of course, Beth Getz was asked about that, but probably the juiciest portion of the conversation, the newsiest portion of the conversation with Beth Getz, it was centered around the revenue sharing portion of the conversation, which we can dive into that tonight. But the talk, as you would suspect from Iowa, very much centered around the quarterback position and on Mark Gronowski. And of course, Kirk Ferentz, he was asked about Mark Gronowski and how's it going with the Hawkeyes. And on the podium, on the big podium, he was maybe a little more reserved than elsewhere in his remarks on Mark Gronowski. So the big main podium, we heard from Kirk Ferentz this afternoon about 1:30, 1:45 in that window Central Time. And of course, he was asked about the quarterback, the transfer quarterback, Mark Gronowski, two-time national champion at the FCS level, and of course, the former Walter Payton Award winner. Here's what he said about Mark Gronowski, quote, "As far as Mark Gronowski, still haven't seen him compete live. We haven't had a chance to see him live in practice, but I can tell you, after being around him for 7+ months, just a tremendous young person, just a really impressive young man, did a great job in the classroom at South Dakota State, obviously did a great job on the field. All the things that we thought were positives about Mark Gronowski, we've gotten to see those firsthand. He's been a great addition to our football team. Really looking forward to seeing him in the huddle and actually taking snaps with our team," end quote. So that was Kirk Ferentz after his opening statement and a couple of other questions he was asked about the transfer quarterback, Mark Gronowski. I would describe that as a little bit measured, which is probably to be expected. Kirk Ferentz isn't about to go make national headlines with something, a bold claim that he makes about his quarterback, Mark Gronowski. That would not be the Kirk Ferentz formula. That would not be the Kirk Ferentz way. And frankly, it wouldn't probably be fair to Mark Gronowski, right? To make some big, bold claim about what Gronowski, when you haven't seen him take live reps in practice, making bold claims about who and what he's going to be at the quarterback position for the Hawkeyes. So I certainly did not expect to hear that from Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino on this Thursday afternoon to end the month of July in 2025. But I thought it was interesting that you have that opening remark from Kirk Ferentz at the podium addressing the main collection of reporters. And look at that comment versus this. Adam Rittenberg, his story about the Hawkeyes today on Iowa football, and of course on Mark Gronowski, his ability to elevate Iowa football. I guess it would do all of us a service here if I just read you the headline from Adam Rittenberg. So how this ESPN piece today is positioned, and this was from this afternoon, right after Kirk Ferentz finished up on the main podium. Iowa offense ready to continue upward path, Kirk Ferentz says. So that's straight from the horse's mouth. That's from the head football coach, Kirk Ferentz. And here's what he said about Mark Gronowski to ESPN, to Adam Rittenberg. So this was, again, maybe hasn't made quite the rounds yet. The comment that Gronowski has been everything that we thought he would be positives-wise, we've seen that firsthand. That kind of took the early storm, right? That was kind of the early wave that led the pack, so to speak. But how about this? I know we'll be much improved at quarterback. That's not a knock on anybody, but if you just go back and chart the games over the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons for that matter, we've had bad health there, we've had bad fortune, bad luck, and quite frankly, playing with some guys that weren't ready to play at this level. That is not your typical Kirk Ferentz quote, but I think he's right. I think he's honest in saying that frankly, look, the Deacon Hills and others at times, Cade McNamara with his health probably wasn't fully ready to go at this level. That's not what Iowa signed up for, but that's what Iowa got with Cade McNamara. Spencer Petras beforehand and some of the other quarterbacks in between, the Padillas and on of the world. That was an interesting quote from Kirk Ferentz that didn't really totally fall in line with what he said at the podium. He was, I think, a little bit more transparent with ESPN. He had this to say as well. Granted, it was at the FCS level with Mark Gronowski, but winning is winning, and his level, his success as a player, and the kind of human being he is, it's been really impressive. With transfers, I don't want to say it's a great challenge, but there's a degree of a challenge when you come into a program at his age where we've got the majority of our guys that have been there a long time. But the way Gronowski has handled that, navigated that, and just seamlessly in a really intelligent way navigated that, it was very understated. So that very good to hear from the head football coach, Kirk Ferentz, on one Mark Gronowski, who we've said it again and again and again over the course of this offseason. And it's fitting to, again, revisit it on Big Ten Media Days, that if Iowa is to achieve what Iowa, I think, can achieve in 2025, even against a schedule that features an Indiana team that a year ago was an exciting upstart, and that features a Penn State team that by many is considered, well, they got voted by Cleveland.com the preseason favorite in the Big Ten, but just nationally, beyond the local Big Ten reporters, if you will, nationally, Penn State thought to be a player across the country this season. Iowa gets to host Penn State this year. You welcome in Oregon, and of course, we know there's some other potential challenges on the back half of that schedule. We'll see about Dylan Raiola and company, how big of a challenge that is. Michigan State, how far along are they now a year further into trying to rebuild that program? Now, obviously, they beat Iowa a season ago. So you've got those big-time challenges on the schedule. Kirk Ferentz knows that. And in order to meet and overcome those challenges, Mark Gronowski needs to be the guy that the jump from the FCS to FBS level is not some big, mighty leap. The guy that had 3,000-plus passing yards, 29 touchdowns, a 68% completion percentage during their championship season in 2023, Gronowski's got to be that guy. And again, in that remark to Rittenberg with ESPN, I think that Kirk Ferentz feels like there's a pretty good chance maybe Iowa has got that guy. I thought it was interesting, too, that Kirk made a point, if you missed it, and there's a lot to consume today, not just here with me and with us, with Iowa at the Voice of College Football or on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, but across Twitter and Facebook and your favorite Iowa website, if it's, with us, HawkeyesWire.com or elsewhere. The 247 crew, I think, does a sensational job. And On3, and, of course, your traditional folks, my friends at the Des Moines Register, Hawk Central, Chad Lystico, He's primo, right? Top of the Iowa reporting industry alongside Tyler Tatchman. There's a lot of places to consume Iowa football news, and probably you're scooping it all up today. But in that, it's exciting to hear a lot of what Kirk Ferentz has to say. And this might have gotten kind of lost in the weeds if, again, there's just that Iowa and college football news overload going on today from Big Ten Media Days. I thought it was interesting what Kirk Ferentz had to say while on the Big Ten Network set. So you get the main podium session with Kirk Ferentz. You get those breakaway interviews where, oh, by the way, we'll talk about this in a little bit. You found out that Cody Fox no longer rostered with the Iowa Hawkeyes. That came out of that breakout portion of news today. And then you get Kirk Ferentz strolling by the Big Ten Network set with the crew right there for that extra 10, 15-minute interview. And then, of course, the players from Iowa, they're making their rounds, and they had their appearance on the Big Ten Network set as well. So Kirk Ferentz with the Big Ten Network set, he was asked about quarterback Mark Gronowski. And, of course, he was asked about the quarterback, right, because that's probably the biggest story of the offseason for Iowa. It remains the biggest story. Can these Hawkeyes, can Tim Lester, can they take a leap? Can they continue to ascend in year two? But the quarterback, have they finally figured out the quarterback position with Mark Gronowski? And I thought this was an interesting remark from Kirk Ferentz. Quote, I think the levels conversation is so overrated. I think good players are good players. Otherwise, everybody in the NFL would be coming from marquee schools and programs. And the other thing I would say about Mark Gronowski that I admire, he came in with a surgery, a post-surgery, and couldn't do all the hard work that guys do in the spring and in the winter program and in spring ball. Yet Mark Gronowski handled it really adeptly, didn't try to force anything. And now that he's working, everybody in our building, all the players, anybody that associates with Mark Gronowski just has the highest regard for him. But and that's great to hear, right? That's what you want to hear about Mark Gronowski, is that he's earning that respect with the work that he's putting in. He obviously was very involved as he could be as he recovered from the offseason shoulder surgery. But we heard positive things on that front, that Mark Gronowski, in the bits and pieces that he could be involved throughout the spring, was very engaged and involved in learning Tim Lester's offense, in, again, the small bits and pieces that he could try to throw a little bit or get into some timing with wide receivers. And then we found out he brought a handful of Hawkeyes down to Texas, to Dallas, for a little bit of extra throwing work throughout the offseason. So all of that has been good news, has been what you want to hear on the leadership front from Mark Gronowski. And I would expect no different. And you're hearing that here from Kirk Ferentz. But I think that's an interesting remark, that Kirk Ferentz isn't real caught up in the, hey, he played at South Dakota State, and now he's got to come do this in the Big Ten and at Iowa. He said the levels conversation is overrated and that good players are good players. Let's certainly hope that that is the case for the Hawkeyes. They will need for that to be the case for Mark Gronowski and the Hawkeyes. So let me tell you how the rest of tonight is going to work. If you're new here, probably those of you that are hanging out so far tonight on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, you're a part of the faithful, right? You're a part of the returning group of viewers here, and I love and appreciate all of you for taking time out on Mondays and Thursdays to hang out with me and to hang out with us on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. But if you are new here and you're caught up in Big Ten Media Days and you're jumping back into Iowa football coverage and the college football season that is ahead, on Thursday nights, this is our call-in show. So I opened the floor up and I just tossed it into the YouTube chat over there, the StreamYard link where you can jump in backstage, and anything that has caught your attention from Iowa's stay today at Big Ten Media Days, or just the Big Ten Media Days as a whole. A lot of conversation, anything that jumped out to you, feel free to jump in here and let's chop it up tonight on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football. Again, I say it every show, every week, but the best way to support me and to support us is to like and subscribe to the channel and to share this with your Hawkeye friends, your college football friends out there. Okay, so we led by talking about Kirk Ferentz's remarks on one Mark Gronowski, his quarterback. What else did he have to say that was of note? And this is not shocking, but Kirk Ferentz was asked on a regular basis today, how do you go about replacing your linebacker, Jay Higgins? And that, of course, is a big-time replacement, a big-time loss for the Hawkeyes this season. I would take it a step further, and I get that. Look, on the Big Ten Network desk for a national TV broadcast, you're not going to get into every minute detail of the Iowa Hawkeyes, but look, it's replacing a couple of very good linebackers. It's not just replacing Jay Higgins, though obviously Jay Higgins was magical. He was fantastic for the Hawkeyes, but it's Nick Jackson too. So it's that duo at linebacker. How do you replace it? And that was a popular piece of discussion both at the podium and with the Big Ten Network crew. And I thought one of the most interesting, newsworthy items today, if it's not catching steam and catching fire like wildfire yet, just you wait, it will. This will be one of the quotes that gains steam and that a lot of people are talking about because it sets us up for a fall camp that gets underway in a week's time that could be kind of dramatic with some position battles. Here was Kirk Ferentz, what he said to the Big Ten Network crew, and he might have said this to other folks in other places in the breakout sessions. He didn't say, I don't remember him saying this at the podium, but Kirk Ferentz on the running backs, the linebackers, he was asked, hey, how do you go about replacing Caleb Johnson? How do you go about replacing Jay Higgins? And again, I would say, don't forget about Nick Jackson in that group as well. But Kirk Ferentz, how about this quote? This team, as much as any team I can remember recently, it's going to go through August. If I wrote down our starters right now, I'd be wrong probably on 5, 6, 7 of them, I'm guessing. That's a pretty major tell from Kirk Ferentz and from the head football coach that he truly believes this is going to be a fall camp full of some major position battles in Iowa City. I still think that you got a pretty good idea. And Kirk Ferentz, in saying that, did when he was asked, hey, who do you expect to fill in to be that next guy that steps up for Jay Higgins at backer? He said Jaden Harrell was the first name that came to mind for Iowa and for the Hawkeyes. And, of course, no big surprise, Carson Shire was the second name that he mentioned. But then he went into that spiel about this being a fall camp. And, of course, it was on the heels of getting asked about the linebackers that this is going to be in August where he can't just write down the starters for you right now. And, oh, by the way, he isn't going to write down the starters for any of us right here and right now going into fall camp. That has been a consistent theme from Kirk Ferentz dating back to the spring. He made it clear back then that, look, there will not be this opening spring depth chart. And look, I've been treating it like a gospel every time we do Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live on Monday nights at 6 o'clock, on Thursday nights, usually at 6 o'clock, though, of course, we started tonight at 6:30. So we could let the Hawkeyes at Big Ten Media Days clear that stage over there on the Big Ten Network. The players swung by late. I've been treating this thing as a little bit of a gospel, the gospel of Hawks, if you will, to guide us through this offseason. But I've been told by Kirk Ferentz, don't treat this as gospel, okay? Because right now there are position battles that are very much up for grabs out there. And I still think that when the dust settles, you got a really good chance that Jaden Harrell, Carson Shire, those are two starting linebackers for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think we pretty well know that Xavier Wampa, right, if he's shifting over to free safety and if that's a change that can re-energize him and get him to the place to where he can be that 5-star signee that Xavier Wampa was well, that he signed on to be, then that's great news, but he's a starter, right? And if he's not, that would be a big-time shock in Iowa City. Same goes for Cohen Intringer. The guy's one of the traveling party, the traveling contingent for Iowa to Big Ten Media Days. And yes, I do put stock into that when you are one of the three players alongside guys that we know are entrenched in this thing. Up front, both sides of the football for Iowa in Logan Jones and in Ethan Hurkett. So though those could be interesting position battles, and Kirk Ferentz says today, 5, 6, 7, if I wrote them down and tried to Sharpie it, we might have to rip that up and chuck it away, because that's the kind of position battles we got going. I still think there's leaders in the clubhouse, but Kirk Ferentz is at least selling it today that these are going to be some legitimate battles. And if we had to tonight, what do you guys say? Which are the position battles that you say when, again, and I'll toss it on the screen one more time here for those of you that are late arrivals or just joining, this team, as much as any team I can remember recently, it's going to go through August. If I wrote down our starters right now, I'd be wrong probably on 5, 6, 7 of them, I'm guessing. So let's play the give me 5 positions, 5 names game. What are the 5 starters that Kirk Ferentz is talking about here? I feel pretty good that TJ Hall is, based on what we've heard over the course of the offseason, that he, again, like the 2 players that we've talked about at linebacker in Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire, that TJ Hall's a leader in the clubhouse at corner. But if you give me a couple of positions, and I'm trying to find a non-starting 5, if you will, an undecided starting 5, both of the 2 cornerback positions, that's on the list, right? I mean, that's got to be 2 of them right there. TJ Hall, Deshaun Lee, we know, are battling for a position right there. Obviously, you got Shaheed Barrows to mix into that group. You've got other names on campus. I think you flip over to the other side of the football, and though we hear lots of great things about Trevor Lauk, and maybe, again, if I'm picking leaders in the clubhouse to earn the starting job, Trevor Lauk might be that leading name at left tackle. I think left tackle is obviously one of those 5 position groups where they're battling. I'm kind of getting talked into a little bit, and maybe it's too hook, line, and sinker. No, I can't. I can't get bought in on it. Kirk Ferentz is trying to get me bought in on it, but I can't flinch here. Kamari Moulton is this team's starting running back. But Kirk Ferentz was positive about the group that he's got battling at running back. He said about that group today. So I'm going to say that's not one of them. I think Kamari Moulton is a definite starter. So maybe one of the 2 linebacker positions, and right guard, you could have a little bit of a battle going on the interior there. You feel settled with Bo Stevens, Logan Jones, of course, and Jennings Dunker. So 3 of the 5 offensive line positions, those are entrenched. You've got a ton of returning starting experience there and reasons to feel really good about that Hawkeye interior offensive line. But you've got 1 guard position that is a little unsettled. Could you move Bryce George there? Could that be a possibility? He was an offensive tackle at Ferris State, but look, I say starting 5, best 5 across the offensive line. In football, you know this, I know this, I'm not breaking any news to you. The best college football teams, the best high school teams, the best high school teams, best college football teams, the best NFL teams, typically. Quarterback, obviously, you want that superstar quarterback, and that can definitely narrow the gap for you. Historically great defense, okay, maybe that can position you to win big and to win championships. But again, you know this, I know this, it's not some big secret. If you're great up front, typically that coincides with the best form or fashion of winning football. And so maybe for Iowa, best 5, starting 5 includes a Bryce George up front and at somewhere other than left tackle, which was sort of the initial perceived, hey, that's where he's going to slot in and help the Hawkeyes. So maybe it is left tackle right guard that Kirk Ferentz is talking about. One of the punt team gunners, Dino Chef, jumps in. Knowing Iowa, it's not crazy to say that, yes, when Kirk Ferentz says that, he's talking special teams too. My mind, and this shows, a lack of, I don't know, just probably the general fandom, and I would assume a lot of folks are this way too. You don't initially think special teams, right? I'm thinking 22 starting spots, but it's more than that. And Kirk Ferentz is thinking larger than that. He's thinking special teams as well. So, Dino Chef, you could be absolutely onto something with that. You also said left guard, left tackle, my man Kelvin Fisher. Kelvin in the house, great to see you, Kelvin. And cornerback, wide receivers. Kirk Ferentz had an interesting remark to end his sit down with the Big Ten Network, did he not, about wide receiver? We can kick that around in just a moment. But I think, Dino Chef, you're onto something that don't count out special teams on this front, though. Iowa in a very good situation with the main positions that we think of special teams wise. You think of kicker with Drew Stevens, and obviously Reese Dakin had a phenomenal first season with the Hawkeyes, and I think the latest great, Aussie, for the Hawkeyes will only continue to get better and better as he learns how to coffin corner kick a little bit and pinpoint accuracy a little bit more, just a little bit more of that positional punting. I think Iowa's got a great start with Reese Dakin. So the two of the largest special teams positions, you're pretty settled with great ones in Drew Stevens and in Reese Dakin, but you could be onto something. Maybe I'm just whittling this down to your starting 22 here, 11 offense, 11 defense, and forgetting about special teams a little bit. But if we're talking that, kind of main 22 in most fans' minds, right? Offense, defense, starting 11 both ways. I would say that if Kirk Ferentz says, hey, we got 5 undecided right now, 5 that are going to be legitimate position battles in camp, I think definitely both corner spots are a part of that mix that Kirk Ferentz is talking about. I would say left tackle, maybe, probably guard, and then take your pick. Maybe one of the linebacker spots and something else I'm not thinking of. Safety feels pretty settled to me, though obviously we got to go see Cohen Intringer take a leap forward and, get thrust into that big-time, first-time starting role. And Xavier Wampa at safety, I know, Hawkeye fans, we get it. He's got to take a starring type leap, but I feel like that has a pretty more than likely settled starting 2 there, though. I will continue to say Kale Kolarek, I loved what I saw. I'm getting drunk again on the open spring practice, and maybe Kids Day at Kinnick in a couple of weeks will revise some of the thought processes here from yours truly, but I thought Kolarek looked like one of the guys in the defensive backfield that he can go play now. I know doesn't come in with maybe the same blue chip nature attached or some of the expectations attached, but give me football players now. And Iowa has made a history of, look, you come in and earn this thing. I'm not saying anything that you guys don't know. A walk-on, lower-rated recruit comes in, and if they're one of the best options, they're going to play at Iowa. Those politics of, hey, the blue chip kid, that didn't fly at Iowa. The best player is going to see the football field. And to me, looks like Kolarek could still be one of the best players in that defensive backfield. So a lot to dissect from Big Ten Media Days today with Iowa and from just the conference as a whole. We open tonight, and by the way, welcome everyone. Like this broadcast, share this broadcast, subscribe to the channel, please. That's the best way to support me and to support Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. And ultimately, my man, Mark Rogers, the brain trust, the owner, the architect of college, the voice of college football, and my man, Corey Brada, who I know all of you guys love as well. You subscribe, that supports all of us right here, Iowa at the voice of college football and Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Logan is in the house. Let's see, Borge Warner in the house. Go Hawks. What's going on? Welcome to the program. Logan always hanging out. Let's go, Hawks. We're getting close to football now. Getting close to football. And Logan, you asked, what about our tight end room? That's important. Tight end you. I don't know. I think that's a great one to toss into the mix. Cornerback, left tackle, right guard, or interior guard, one of the two. And tight end, I think, absolutely is a big-time position battle, right? It's got to be. Because what would lead you to believe that that's settled? And you're right, that's a very important position for the Hawkeyes with the tradition that Iowa has at tight end. Look, different sheriff in town, right, so to speak, with the offensive coordinator and Tim Lester. It's his second year, but I'm guessing that Tim Lester, and I'm just thinking about Shanahan, right, this Shanahan offense that Tim Lester has installed and continues to whip into full steam and fine shape for the Hawkeyes. Look, it's not like it's devoid of great tight ends in the National Football League. Our man, Mr. George Kittle, one of the greatest tight ends in the National Football League, he is right there in the thick of that San Francisco Shanahan offense and getting paid for good reason. So I don't subscribe, and I know some others have floated that thought process out there that Tim Lester, he didn't care about the tight end. Tight end's not as important at Iowa now. I'll believe that when I see it over a extended period of time in Iowa City. I'm not buying into that line of thinking. I still think tight end is incredibly important. And not just because, look, that is a piece of the puzzle that's important to the Shanahan offense, or we've seen it in the NFL, or in the just more so that in the past we've seen it at Iowa. It's a hallmark of the program. But more importantly than that, a nice tight end that you can trust is one of a quarterback's best friends. Guy over the middle that's sure-handed, that has some weight, that can bounce off a would-be tackler at time and go get some yak for you. That's not going out of style. So count me in the camp that I'm not subscribing to the idea that suddenly tight end is out of style in Iowa City. So I don't know. Addison Ostringa, Zach Ortworth, I think both at times have shown that they are certainly more than capable of providing some very good, some solid tight end play. Still looking for consistently exceptional there from one or both. And then we'll see if one of the other names in the mix there at tight end can enter that mix. And we're not thinking about those guys as much right now as we march toward August and move past the end of July here into fall camp, as we are in Addison Ostringa and Zach Ortworth. But I would agree. Absolutely. That would be in that mix as one of the position groups that they're jockeying for who's going to go win that job. Okay, what else stood out today? Again, Kirk Ferentz, he wasn't ready to anoint Kamari Moulton today as the Hawkeyes starting running back. And I wouldn't expect Kirk Ferentz to do that. It's probably, in most instances, unless you know and the world knows that, look, you went out to go upgrade your quarterback position. And in this now revenue share era, there's no dummies out here. You paid a pretty penny to bring in Mark Gronowski to be the Hawkeye starting quarterback. And everybody knows that, and he commands that respect as he should. But beyond that, you're probably not sitting there in, the spring, certainly, and probably not coming out of Big Ten Media Days before you've taken a snap, before you've taken a live rep going into fall camp, going out of your way to say, hey, oh, by the way, here's our starting running back. And here's our starting left tackle and right guard. And here's our two starting corners. And the linebackers look like this. We want iron to sharpen iron. I want Hawkeye to sharpen Hawkeye. And I'm sure that there's some of that thought process behind Kirk Ferentz. He's going to be a little guarded. He's not going to hand you a sharpied in, written in stone depth chart today. And I don't expect him to. And frankly, I don't know that would be good for Iowa to take that approach. I do think Kamari Moulton winds up as the Hawkeyes starting running back. I think, to me, it was clear that he is several paces in front of the pack from the bits and pieces. And admittedly, it's a open spring practice, and you're not there every single day watching every iota, every ounce of practice. But to me, it looked pretty clear the way Kamari Moulton ended last season with what he did versus Maryland, versus Missouri. I think the Wisconsin game, right, was the other game where he popped off a little bit. Chunk runs in all three of those. And what he did in the open spring practice, I will correlate the end of last season into what I saw at spring. I'm going to feel pretty confident that Kamari Moulton's the starting running back for the Hawkeyes. But Kirk Ferentz again today, he wasn't going to just go ahead and say, yes, write that, put it down in stone, Sharpie it away. He said about Caleb Johnson, he was asked about replacing linebackers and running backs, and then in particular, specifically the running back position. I'll just read the quote from Kirk Ferentz today. And he was asked about Caleb Johnson, like, how do you go replace that dude? Because that's a real thing, right? As much as I love Kamari Moulton and I think he's due for a breakout season with the Hawkeyes, it's a real thing. Replacing Caleb Johnson, superstar, historic season with Iowa. But Kirk Ferentz says, that's what's so awesome about college sports. I was looking, and this is from the Big Ten Network interview, I was looking at a graphic up on the screen at the start, key departures, Jay Higgins, Caleb Johnson. So Jay Higgins, how do we replace Jack Campbell? We had Jay Higgins, who's not a first-round pick, but a first-round player, college player. And don't rule him out with the Ravens either, Ferentz said. He continued, but Higgins stepped in, he learned, he watched other guys, learned, went in, played really well, but he had done the hard work necessary. Caleb Johnson last year, his turning point, in my opinion, was in August. He practiced so well the entire month of August, just a focus that he's always been a great kid, but his focus was here, there, sometimes here. Last year, it was like, boom, right there, and that's how he played. So things don't happen by accident. There's a maturity process, being around other guys, learning. And I look at our running backs room right now, I'm not sure who's going to be the starter. I'm not sure of how the reps are going to get divided, and it may change as we go through the season, but it's a really good group of guys. We've got guys that we feel good about, and I think we can play winning football with all five guys that were with us in the spring inquel. So there you go. That's what Kirk Ferentz had to say about the running back position today. And again, I'm tossing my name into the ring, into the hat here that Kamari Moulton is the guy. And I know that Kirk Ferentz feels good about Jazz Patterson and McNeil and on and on and on. All these running backs on the roster for the Hawkeyes. But count me in the Kamari Moulton camp. But I guess the most important thing there is just the overarching theme that Kirk Ferentz genuinely, at least, and he's felt and sounded genuine on the Big Ten Network desk, that, look, he doesn't know who the starting running back is today. And I, again, don't expect him to share with us who the Hawkeyes starting running back is today, but he doesn't necessarily know the entirety of how these reps are going to be divvied up for the Hawkeyes. So assuming that everybody's kind of like right here and we're all climbing, but it's neck and neck, that's not the worst situation for the Hawkeyes to be in. If guys are battling and pushing each other, but hopefully somebody, and don't misconstrue the way this is phrased right here, right now, hopefully somebody can take that Caleb Johnson jump, right, in the focus, in the production, in the intensity. And again, my early vote would be for Kamari Moulton in that regard. Though Jazz Patterson and others have been around the block a little bit in Iowa City, and I do think that mattered for Caleb Johnson a season ago. Kirk Ferentz said it snapped, it clicked into place last August for Caleb Johnson, and there was a different maturity about him. I think we all saw so early on, like at times in the couple of seasons beforehand, I'm sure you and plenty of Hawkeye fans like, dude, we got to feed Caleb Johnson the rock. Get this man the ball. He is a game breaker. He's a running back that he can go crease one and change the complexion of this thing. If it's out of the backfield catching the football, if it's turned straight, give to him. I want more carries for Caleb Johnson, and at times that didn't happen all the time for Caleb Johnson at Iowa early in his Hawkeye career. And if you're like me, you kind of scratch your head like, are we giving the right running back the bulk of the carries here? Is he not getting enough of these? Can we just turn and hand off to him 20, 25 times a game? And maybe it wasn't quite the right time for Caleb Johnson. Maybe it was a little bit too soon, but it became pretty clear pretty early last season that it was different for Caleb Johnson now that he had reached a new maturity level. And hopefully that could be the case for one of these running backs. Okay, so Aiden at least just jumped into the chat. Aiden, what's up? Welcome to the program. I'll get right back to that. Kenton Keller in the house. Kenton, good evening. Great to have you hanging out with us on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Go Hawks, baby. Yes, we are inside 40 days, folks, approaching 35. I'm going to get aggressive here and round down to, let's just say we're a month out from Hawkeye football now. We're a month away from Albany. I know that's not a factual statement, but dang it, coming off of Big Ten Media Days, that's how we're going to treat it tonight, all right? We're a month away from Hawkeye football. But, Aiden, you brought up something that I was going to touch on before we got out of here tonight. And I do think it's one of the largest developments of the day. Kirk Ferentz just said Reese Vanderzee is the best player on the team. I did not see that quote before I jumped in here to start this program tonight. But I did see Kirk Ferentz on the Big Ten Network set talking about Reese Vanderzee. And the part that I heard was something similar to that effect, Aiden. And if you've got that quote and that tweet, by all means, just toss it into the chat and I'll toss it right onto the screen here and we can dissect it more thoroughly. I'm going to take you at face value here that that's exactly what Kirk Ferentz said. But Kirk also said this on the Big Ten Network set on Reese Vanderzee. He was hurt a lot in August. He was just a kid out there, but he did go up and he competed for a ball a couple of times during the year and made the catch that got you excited. He's a totally different guy now. Reese Vanderzee's been in the program. He's gone through the summer program, winter program. He's just a different guy physically, maturity-wise. So I think he's going to take a big step forward. And I think we've got a lot of guys in that wide receiver room that have done the hard work. And then he went on to talk about the offensive line plays back to where Iowa likes it to be. They feel good about the quarterback, and you had to navigate through those obstacles of the last couple of years. But that is fascinating with Reese Vanderzee. I think we all see that big frame, right? That big-bodied type receiver in Reese Vanderzee. And it didn't take long in his Hawkeye career for Reese Vanderzee to go out there and start doing some things in his first, he had plenty of hype going into the season about what Reese Vanderzee could be. And lo and behold, he goes up, has a couple of touchdown grabs right out of the chute. We were not accustomed to wide receivers of late hauling in touchdown passes. And Reese Vanderzee, right from the word go, last season, 5 grabs, 66 yards, a couple of which were touchdowns. Obviously, then the injury bug, he had to battle with that all season. He's added weight. That could be important. Hopefully that helps on the staying healthy piece of the puzzle, staying healthy end of the equation. 14 grabs, $176, 3 touchdowns a season ago. And again, a nice little chunk of that was early in the season, that first game that the Hawkeyes played versus Illinois State when he had a couple of touchdown grabs and 66 yards. Kirk Ferentz is not one, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong on this here. Kirk Ferentz is not one to go out of his way to blow smoke about a player. If he has high praise for you at this time of the calendar year, I'm going to put some stock into that, because he's not going to go out of his way to try to hype a bunch of stuff up just for it to come crashing down later. I think that Kirk Ferentz clearly is very confident that Reese Vanderzee, as a sophomore coming into this thing, the Rock Rapids, Iowa native, that he's about due for a big-time breakout season. And so much of this for Iowa's wide receivers, you do have to just take it back to, okay, and I'm thinking, last 4 or 5, however many years, right, into the Brian Ferentz era and start one season into the Tim Lester era. Quarterback play, pass protection, not a massive problem. Not to the degree that it had been a season ago, but certainly the quarterback play with Cade McNamara in 2024, his injury concerns, and then all of a sudden, now you have to go to Brendan Sullivan, and now you got to go to Jackson Stratton. And, of course, before that with Spencer Petras, with Deacon Hill, with Padilla. The quarterback situation has – to say it's been a disappointment would be a wild understatement for Hawkeye fans and for Iowa football. The pass protection, the offensive line before that, when Kirk Ferentz says today that we finally got that offensive line back to where we like it, I mean, that is a massive understatement. The offensive line a couple of years ago was an atrocity in Iowa City based on Hawkeye standards. There were a couple of years there where, look, Coach Barnett and this Iowa offensive line, everybody is ripe for criticism because it just flat out wasn't good enough. It was one of the worst in the Big Ten. It was one of the worst nationally amongst power conference teams. And okay, Iowa has navigated through that. They've navigated beyond that. They've got questions up front along that offensive line, but I don't anticipate falling back into what we saw a couple of years ago up front, where you had all sorts of offensive line issues. And that's even with a big question at left tackle. That's fair to have that question mark going into this season. If you power rank question marks, left tackle's definitely ding, ding, ding. It's up on that big board, family feud style there. You just got yourself a bunch of points for the team by saying left tackle. It's a question. Guard, we know, right? You got another starting guard position that you got to fill. So while there's questions up front, this offensive line group collectively much more settled and improved than it was the last couple of seasons before. Quarterback, we expect quantum leaps and bounds better. So all of that takes us back to Reese Vanderzee and to Jacob Gill and to hopefully a newcomer out of Chattanooga in Sam Phillips, and hopefully and I'm just rattling off names from the wide receiver core here, starting with the ones that are most likely to impact this thing in a big way and take steps forward. Reese Vanderzee, Jacob Gill, obviously, Sam Phillips because of the production elsewhere to step in and their production skyrocket because, oh, by the way, again, you settled the pass protection situation and you've got an offensive line that can produce some run game for you with Kamari Moulton and committee. And you got the quarterback in Mark Gronowski that finally allows you. KJ Parker, yes, thank you, chat. Thank you, Aiden, for tossing his name into that mix. Absolutely. He's somebody that is going to be a part of that mix for the Hawkeyes. That all of that production can radically increase simply because you're not one-dimensional anymore. Simply because they can't just load the box and sell out on the run and know that Iowa doesn't have guys that can pass block and pass protect, and they don't have a quarterback that can, with accuracy and confidence, on time, deliver the football. So all of that lends itself to maybe Reese Vanderzee by his frame, and it's an NFL type frame if he continues to. I'm not saying he's an NFL guy today, immediately tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. But he's got that frame to where he could be that guy down the road, a professional football player, no doubt. With the quarterback, with the offensive line, maybe he is primed to take a big-time leap. Okay, anything that you guys want to get into? What do you make of just Big Ten Media Days as a whole this week? Kirk Ferentz, I thought, and I'm going to write about this at Hawkeyes Wire, I've got to go sifting through. There's a lot of audio out there and video out there, and I got to go find out where it's at. Where is this located now? And I could probably just search it on social media and find it on X, formerly known as Twitter. Kirk Ferentz talking about the SEC, Big Ten. I should be on this channel. I should get it right, dang it, right? It's the Big Ten SEC crossover. It's not the SEC Big Ten crossover, but the Big Ten SEC discussed, proposed crossover. Could that happen? Coach Kirk Ferentz, how do you feel about a Big Ten SEC crossover if you get it? And Kirk Ferentz took the company line. Much of what we heard this week, it was, well, wait a second, the math ain't mathing. The SEC's playing 8 conference games. We're playing 9. And, oh, by the way, we have a built-in in-state Power 4 game in our non-conference schedule every single August, September with Iowa State. So that's 10 that we're playing. And everybody else out there isn't necessarily doing that. Some are in the SEC, right? Florida's got a big-time challenge across its schedule. So it's not that everybody is not playing, 9-10 Power 4 conference or, conference and out-of-conference opponents. And, oh, by the way, Curt Cignetti was somebody that nationally he was a bit of a lightning rod this week because he definitely took up for, I think, the Big Ten commish, Tony Petitti, but also was defending, hey, wait a second, why did you get rid of that Virginia game, and how do you answer for that? And he said, we just want an SEC schedule. So there was a lot of discussion about that over the course of this Big Ten Media Days week. But let's get back to what's important for us, right, for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Kirk Ferentz, he said that, wait a second, the math's not mathing. The SEC, they're not playing 9 games yet, and probably that's something we'd like to see if we ever are going to do a Big Ten SEC crossover. But I thought it was important that Kirk Ferentz basically said, hey, as long as we're on my watch, the Iowa State game is very important. I don't want to give that one up to go play an SEC opponent. So I thought that was a very telling quote today from Kirk Ferentz. And hey, I would imagine Kirk Ferentz's thoughts are valued by Beth Getz, by the Iowa Athletics Department. Has to be, right? You got to take the longtime 27-year Iowa Hawkeye head football coach. You better take his opinion seriously, right? He should have some legitimate input on how you approach the future from a scheduling standpoint. But having said that, Kirk Ferentz's opinion doesn't mean that that's what Beth Getz or the University of Iowa ultimately signs up for. And I think I've said on this forum before that money talks. If we've learned anything in college football over the past, 5 years especially, and some would say, well, I'll take you back to the 80s with Oklahoma and Georgia, and they've got, a lawsuit, and they take it to Congress, and all of a sudden we're getting paid some big-time TV money. It's been about money for a long time, and money talks, and if a Big Ten SEC crossover is a part of that conversation, then maybe the Cy-Hawk game goes by the wayside. But I think Kirk Ferentz was pretty clear in telling us today that, look, my vote is that the Cy-Hawk game matters. He said it's a big-time challenge to play that game. He said, I don't like playing it because it's such a hard series, and with a smile on his face. I think that he does like playing the series, but he's paying respect, paying homage to the Cy-Hawk game. I don't like playing it because it's such a hard series. They've done a great job, and it's a great competitive thing, and so it's good for our state, and why wouldn't we play it? But it is one more big matchup. So Kirk Ferentz saying what we all know, that, look, if you ever get to a Big Ten SEC crossover, wait a second, those guys better be playing 9 games as well, conference games like us in the Big Ten. And if we get to where we got a built-in Big Ten SEC crossover game, okay, probably that's a telltale, follow the breadcrumbs here sign. And we've talked about this summer that, well, wait a second, is that Cy-Hawk game in danger? But also in that, Kirk Ferentz was very quick to say, this game matters to me. It matters to us. And I don't want to get rid of the Cy-Hawk game because it's important for our state. And I thought that was an important detail coming out. Big picture, not about this Iowa football season or, hey, what the heck does the offensive line look like and how's Gronowski progressing? I get it. Those are the more pressing items that fans are concerned about. How the heck are we going to win this football season? That's what you care about. And yet, big picture for Iowa, that was an important development today. Okay, let's see here. Some items from you before we get out of here. It's a call-in show, and I've done a poor job of promoting that you can jump in on Thursday nights with me. This show on Thursdays is designed for that, for you to grab that StreamYard link that's in the chat and jump in here and share your thoughts. So moving forward on Thursday nights as we progress now throughout fall camp and, of course, the season itself, I think Thursdays in season pretty naturally will kind of play out a little bit like tonight has, in the sense that we'll be reacting to a lot of what Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa camp had to say, because you'll have that weekly press conference that has taken place, and we'll be, on Mondays reacting to the game that was and building up to the game that's ahead. And then, obviously the Thursday show will be reacting to, hey, what's the injury updates and what did Kirk Ferentz say? What have the Hawkeye players said? And then, the back half of those Thursday shows, or as much of it as you guys want, it's a call-in show for you to jump in here and chat with me and to make this Iowa community just that, an Iowa community where we're sharing our thoughts and at times loving each other, loving up on each other, and maybe at times disagreeing and squabbling with each other as brothers and sisters do sometimes right here at Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. So just know that every Thursday night you are free to jump in here backstage, come front stage and hang out with me and share your thoughts, concerns about Iowa athletics, football, basketball, you name it, right here on Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Okay. I think most would agree with you, by the way, Aiden, even though that Cy-Hawk game benefits Iowa State more than Iowa. And if you had a Big Ten SEC crossover, that's going to even more so be the case in that regard. So we're right here at the end of the road tonight. And here was Beth Getz. She made the rounds today, too, at Big Ten Media Days. And some have wondered, what does this revenue share picture look like for Iowa? And you guys that hang out every week, you've caught on to this by now. This in the weeds stuff, sometimes the financials of football, of men's and women's basketball, roster structuring. I'm a dork. I love that kind of stuff. I know that the NFLization of college sports, and I totally understand your concern on that front. You might not be crazy about all of that. And in a lot of ways, I'm not either, right? I think one of the troubling developments this week is that cap that was out there with the revenue share in the House versus NCAA settlement. Doesn't sound like the NIL Go clearinghouse and the College Sports Commission. And I'm the dummy that bought in, right? I'm the dummy that was like, well, wait a second. We might actually have a salary cap in college athletics. And lo and behold, we are, not even a month yet into this revenue share era and the House versus, we're about a month beyond the House versus NCAA settlement getting ratified. And lo and behold, now we got the College Sports Commission, who was in conjunction with that clearinghouse, sort of operating as the police, so to speak, on, hey, what is real and fair market NIL value? And there's reports this week from Ross Dellinger of Yahoo that basically they've walked that back already. So what was if you want to call it a salary cap, using the Dr. Evil quotes here, we might not have a salary cap anymore. We might be back to you can use that Swarm Collective and the flight funds, if we're talking Iowa, to support these programs beyond that $20.5 million revenue share. We'll see. That's kind of, we don't really know what a lot of that looks like yet. But okay, so I'm in on all of that, right? All of those dorky type of roster structuring conversations, I find that fascinating. I'm intrigued by it. And here was Beth Getz today, talking about Iowa's revenue share approach. I've got a longer write-up on this, by the way, HawkeyesWire.com on what Beth Getz said. Go read my work over there and support the team's work. It means a lot to me. It's how I get paid, frankly. You guys liking this show, sharing the show, watching the show, a super chat if you're so generous, and then reading the work over at Hawkeyes Wire. That's what feeds the family here for me, Josh Helmer, and my wife. And anyway, so I love it if you guys go read the work every now and again. I've got a longer write-up on Beth Getz over there. But here's some of what she said. Every athlete on our campus will not receive revenue sharing. So we made decisions based on the first year. We really looked at this as a snapshot in time with the ability, again, to pivot as we needed to. So certainly focused on our revenue sports. Doesn't mean you may not have a sprinkling of others. We have some scholarship pieces that'll be a part of that as well. But we'll have to see how it all plays out and how we need to adjust to the market, to what our peers are doing, et cetera, as we go forward. So that was Beth Getz today with the media scrum down there from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, talking about the Iowa Athletics revenue share plan for today. And oh, by the way, though she would not get into specifics of which programs are a part of Iowa's revenue share right now, she gave us a pretty clear indication into what we basically already suspected or knew, that Iowa probably is following a lot of what is the consistent plan across college athletics. Big 3/4 chunk to football. And she didn't say this, okay? So this is not me telling you what Beth Getz said now, but across college athletics, 3/4 or so chunk to college football, a nice chunk of change, 15%, maybe in 20% in other places to men's basketball, and the rest for women's basketball, and insert sport that your program, your athletic department cares about here. For Iowa, obviously, women's basketball, wrestling, those would be, other programs in addition to football and to men's basketball that, of course, would come to mind. So while Beth Getz said not everybody is receiving revenue sharing, and while she wouldn't mention specific programs that would be receiving revenue share and have been receiving revenue share payments from the Hawkeye Athletic Department, she said this: it's sort of a moving target. At the end of the year, we'll have to see. Clearly, we are focused on men's, women's basketball, football, and wrestling is a priority for us as well. But there will be a smattering of other individuals, I think, along the way that we'll see in quote. So what does that tell us? I think it tells us what we already thought we knew, but now we're hearing again confirmed from the Iowa Athletics Director, Beth Getz, that, look, football, we're taking care of you, no doubt. And we should, right? You pay the bills. You keep the lights on. We got to take care of Iowa football. It'd be stupid not to. We're feeding the monster that feeds everybody else. Men's basketball, Ben McCollum, don't you worry. We are keeping you competitive. We are giving you money. And I think we've seen that with Bennett Sturt's following coach. And even though you might have gotten a discount here or there with the initial roster construction for Ben McCollum, you're not just getting these guys because everybody wants to take a pay cut. I do think he's got some financial chips at his disposal, and that's how you got Bennett Sturtz and Hassan, and how you got Alvaro Fulgaris, and we can continue that exercise if need be. And hopefully that's what has Iowa in the mix on the women's basketball side too. I still think you're in a position where you can pounce off that Caitlin Clark effect, but you got to probably win one of these recruitments with a Velichko, McKenna Velichko, and with others out there. So, well, hey, I think we've reached the end of the road tonight. We'll continue to dissect a lot more that we learned from Iowa's stint at Big Ten Media Days. We just scratched the surface. I didn't get into anything that the players said tonight because, I was pounding on the keyboard, working on some other stuff, and focused on what Kirk Ferentz had to say first today. So, frankly, I got to jump into what all the Hawkeye players had to say today, but we'll certainly be diving back into that. I'll cut up some videos and share that, and that'll be, from a presentation standpoint, a little bit more clean versus me rambling and babbling, though we now all know I can do that for an hour plus right here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. But we'll do that next week on Monday night, 6 o'clock. We'll all reconvene right here, Iowa at the Voice of College Football for Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. I'm your host, Josh Elmer. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me for an hour. It's a fun day. It's a fun day, man. Football's getting oh so close, baby. Come on. We almost made it through the doldrums of the offseason. We almost got Hawkeye football back. But we'll be back on Monday, 6 o'clock. Can't wait to see you all there. Until then, subscribe to the channel, share this with a Hawkeye friend or family member, share a super thanks if you're so generous. And again, if not that, the best thing to do is to follow me and follow the Voice of College Football at the VOCFB and my team, the written team over at HawkeyesWire.com, at HawkeyesWire, wherever you consume your, social media, across Twitter, across Facebook. You can find us. Just search Hawkeyes Wire. And we're going to have you covered wall to wall with so much coverage from Iowa's appearance at Big Ten Media Days. I know that we got stories over there. I got to go edit and publish as soon as we sign off here. So our team over there keeps getting bigger and better. Riley's been my guy, my sheriff, my deputy, my lieutenant over there ever since the inception of Hawkeyes Wire. We've brought Scout in about a year ago. He's doing a tremendous job with a lot of our WNBA and Iowa football coverage. And Zach Heine, who you saw on here on our last program, he's been an awesome addition for HawkeyesWire.com. So we got an awesome team, and I can't wait to get our hands dirty on this Iowa football season as it keeps creeping closer and closer. But again, one final time, until then, subscribe, please share the channel. That means so much to me. Leave comments. What do you think? Where did, if I could steal a Colin Cowherd here, where did Josh go wrong? Where did Josh get it wrong? Where did we get it right? What do you guys think about some of what we've discussed tonight? What would you like to discuss on the next episode? Until then, everybody have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and we'll talk to you next time. It'll be Monday night at 6 o'clock. Until then, so long, everybody. And go Hawks!